I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Emmy-winning writer-director Rachel Lee Goldenberg, Executive Producer and Director on Hulu's limited series, Tiny Beautiful Things. First of all, Rachel, I think this is Kathryn Hahn's best work today, honestly, and that's a high bar for her. I really enjoy the way she tackles scenes with these unexpected choices that she makes, and I'm just curious what you most value about her creatively.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head in terms of just the depth she brings is just always unexpected and just always like this. I read a brilliant script, and then every single time that Kathryn says one of the lines from the script, it comes alive in like 12 ways that I never could have imagined before. And, that was, I mean, when the project was brought to me, she was on board, and that was like a true dream for me to get to work with her. And for actors, I'm always looking for someone who's going to make the unexpected choice. It's almost like, even if it's the wrong choice, I'd rather something that I don't expect. And hers is just coming from such a place of radical honesty that it just, you never know where she's going to go with something. And so that was a true joy and really just fun to work with as a director, where it's, where you're certainly never trying to be like, let's find the truth. You're like, oh, there's that truth. Then what if we played it differently and it's this truth, because she's I'd say that, easily the most present actor I've ever worked with.
And so when you're collaborating with someone like her, and then, so many of the other actors on this show are really, really fantastic, honestly. What kind of notes do you typically give to someone like Kathryn Hahn or someone maybe less experienced in the cast? What's the difference when you're kind of working with them on set?
Well, with there's when I'm looking at the scene beforehand, I'm always trying to think of what do I want to get out of the scene? What's important about the scene? What's the goal of this scene? And the really, really cool thing about this project is that the whole ethos of it was that it's both and is the language we used on set. So that, typically my process would be like, okay, this scene is about this character showing their strength or something. But then as I talked about the script with Liz Tigelaar, the creator, the answer was always, it's both and it's this, this scene's about this person trying to show their strength and wanting to be comforted, that there was never an easy answer. And so by the time that I've gotten to set, we've talked about all these scenes. And so I'm sort of have in my head all of these possibilities of everything the scene can be. And so it's less saying like, especially to Kathryn, like, here's what you did wrong, let's try it this way. It's more like, what if you were feeling this instead? What if we try it? What if you try coming in where you're thinking about this scene, not that scene, when you walk into the thinking about this is in your head when you come in, and sort of finding what direction we can go from there. And it was an interesting balance with her trying to sort of make sure that I, like everything else, the show is supposed to be both natural and cinematic and sort of both free and intentional. And so like finding ways for that to be true, so that it's not just me saying, go do whatever you want, see what feels right. It's sort of like, see what feels right, but how can I put some sort of guardrails on that to guide it? And so it really was like sort of the reason I took the project was because it was that both and like kind of terrifying, how do we do everything challenge. And so that bringing that to set was like the joy of it and the struggle of it every day. It was like, okay, so how deep can we go and how complex can we make it, and how many layers, and making sure there's like never easy answers, basically.
Yeah, that's right. And what I love about Tiny Beautiful is it is really grounded. Like, it could have been super melodramatic and really over the top, and I probably would have still really enjoyed that show, but it's really grounded, and it felt very lived in and messy and authentic, and I felt really quite comfortable being in that space. So I'm curious, then, you directed episodes 1 and 2, so along obviously with showrunner Liz Tigelaar, you guys have to really set the main priorities for the look and feel of the show. And I'm just curious, like, what you have to bring so much to that as well. It's not, you're not just a director for hire, so what are you bringing to the table to give that the show that grounded feel?
I mean, the word grounded is spot on. In my pitch deck, one of the pages said ground the shit out of everything. And that was, it was like the comedy, the sex, the sad, like everything, just really finding the truth in that. And so, for example, making sure that the comedy isn't like a way to just lighten up a heavy moment, but it's like the truth of sometimes when the most devastating things are happening, those things are also funny, like a scene that comes to mind just in terms of sort of like the weirdness of the tone and really finding that is the waterbed scene, where it's like she comes in and it's like that scene goes from like, I want to fuck right now to prove that I am who I think I am and just to get something out, and then goes to, oh my God, my life's a mess. I'm a disaster. Oh, this is the most hilarious thing that's ever happened. Wait, but it's not hilarious because actually my life is fucked. Like sort of that, like playing all of those things at once and having that not feel like gimmicky or try hard, but like, this is what life is. Like, we all often were sharing stories of like the devastating moments in our life and the funniest things that happen during those moments, and I feel like everyone has those. And that, the same thing with the, like the underwear, that detail where the mom's not wearing underwear. I mean, and they need her to, and that, that's real, that's a real thing. Some places, I guess, where you need to have underwear to dress a dead body, which just feels absurd and weird and like this technicality when like a person has died, and so I feel like for me it was just processing those things and then finding the grounding and I'm working with Liz and with Kathryn to really make sure that when we went to script everything felt that way, and then in the shooting just trying things and seeing what worked and having just have, it's so annoying to be like, it's everything, it's the both and, but it's like going in with both a ton of intentionality, knowing exactly what I want, and then being totally prepared for anything to happen, and like that like it's like both, it's the both sort of the whole project. And so, yeah, finding that tone is like what I was excited about and what, hopefully why part of why Liz brought me on was because I was sort of ready to find that mixture of, devastation and comedy and just like really mine for truth.
When I saw that you were attached to this before I had seen it, I actually wondered, so this is probably going to be maybe a little funnier than I thought. I thought it was going to be just a full-on straight drama, all about spiraling out of control and all those big things. And so I was really glad that I was maybe, the right idea, because that's exactly what you bring. Like, for example, when Owen Painter comes out with those little underwears that he buys from the shop, I like laughed out loud. And I was like, we're talking about a funeral here, people. And you know why? Because when you're in long-term relationships, whether familial, romantic, whatever, like for example, with your partner, when I'm arguing with my wife, sometimes we will start bursting out laughing because it's so ridiculous. And that's how people talk. And that's what I love about this show. So I'm curious about whether there was any moment in the 2 episodes that you directed where you were just most proud of the way that you guys were able to capture that lightning in a bottle that happens in life.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to hear you say that you expected it to be more comedic because I did it, because that's part of why I want to do the project too, is that I'm looking to do things that sort of scare me and feel hard and feel out of my comfort zone. And like, I've never had more people like text me that I made them sob, than this project. And so I would say like, there's a difference between like, what's my favorite scene or the most fun scene to direct or whatever. And like the scenes that just felt more challenging to me, I'm just not like, I've certainly done things with deep emotion, but I haven't done things where there's someone sobbing every episode, just not in my past. And so part of this process for me was first like in the pitch stage talking to, my initial pitch was to, it was a heavy hitter group to pitch to. It was the Hello Sunshine team, and Cheryl Strayed was on it, and Liz Taylor was on it, and Kathryn Hahn was on my initial pitch. And so it was like, just no pressure. No. But, so part of it was me sort of telling them like, listen, I know that I don't have the perfect thing for you to look at that is this. And that's why I'm excited about it. And that's why I want this opportunity, is because I'm sort of ready to go deeper and like want to go to a different place, and think that, that you can count on me to know that it'll be fun and it won't get to, the comedy will work and the fun parts will work. And like, let me go deep with you. And I think that resonated, I think it's like Liz has said, it's sort of bringing an emotional truth to things that maybe that she hasn't quite done before in this way. And Kathryn talked about sort of coming from, for a long time in her career doing comedy and sort of wanting to get some of these deeper roles. And so I think that sort of resonated with that team specifically, of like, okay, let's bring Rachel on to like have her get to go deep in a different way. And so, so scenes like her opening the box at the end with the coat and like having that feel as deep, and in this really small moment that in another project you get kind of glossed over, becoming the central emotional moment of this, of the pilot, like attacking that and like figuring out how to shoot that and talking about it with Kathryn and like going through that process was, I don't know, it was the most fun I had, but it was definitely like stretching a muscle and getting to do stuff that I feel like I haven't quite been given the opportunity to do before. So that was like, it just felt good to dig in that way.
So given that, what I know, because this was shot a little while ago now, what are your main takeaways that you learned about yourself creatively on working on this show?
I mean, I guess it just, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, I don't think that it like shook my understanding of myself to my core or anything. But I think it's just sort of like was interesting. It was interesting to use that muscle. And then, I mean, this is such a like tiny, beautiful things answer, but frankly, like I lost my grandmother like a month after we finished the show. And I feel like that actually was more sort of applicable. I'm pretty close with my grandmother. And so it was, it was like a real loss. And I feel like it was actually more about like, more than how it affected my directing, it sort of affected my like heart openness and in dealing with that situation, and sort of became like a deeper thing for me, because I feel like, it just, I'm just not used to thinking about things in quite as emotionally deep, honest a way. And it's sort of like having those conversations over and over with Liz and with Kathryn and with all the other actors and everyone sort of like stretched my brain muscles in a way that like was, that felt very resonant to me when I had that loss. So that.
Wow. Yeah, I can see why that would happen. Because you're doing it day in, day out. It kind of starts to become part of your DNA, and then it happens to you in your life. And maybe it gives you a way forward in ways that you didn't have before. And I hear that from a lot of people, to be honest, actually. It's business. So moving on, so that we don't run out of time, I loved Quentin Clare in this. I had seen him in Chippendales stripping as an exotic dancer, and then he does this. Like, it is phenomenal. And the two of them together, especially in the therapist office, the way that you blocked that with the two of them sitting there and I mean, it's pretty standard blocking, but I thought it just worked. There was something about that scene that felt very real to me. And I'm curious, what was a typical day like on set with Kathryn and Quentin that you allowed them that space to be very vulnerable?
That was such a great example, actually, that therapist scene in particular, because it's rare. I mean, it's the longest scene in either of my episodes. And so to get to work with actors of that caliber, I mean, the two of them, and then the third woman, the therapist, Tijuana, she was incredible too. And so to have actors of that caliber get to just play, it was like we were watching a play, I'm just watching behind the monitor for 5 minutes as they do the scene. And it was like a true masterclass. I want like other people to see the process behind that one, because they're all working at such a high level that like, we do the 5-minute take, and then I'd give just like a couple small adjustments. What if you're just feeling a little more like this? What if you're feeling slightly more this? And the scene would go to a completely different place. And so that we like actually had more options than we could really deal with in the edit, because they gave such a range of performances. And working with like that's the difference between working with like really skilled actors who can really be nuanced and sort of like, you know, a small change will just, because they're all actually listening to each other, the process, you know, by the end of the scene's in a completely different place. Like it, you know, is Kathryn falling apart, or is she pissed off, or is she, you know, everyone sort of had a journey there.
Yeah, I know. And then I'm thinking about the flashbacks, which of course are essential to understanding who these people are. And Sarah Pidgeon, who I hadn't really seen much of prior to this as young Claire, blew me away. Owen
Me too.
Painter is so good as Lucas. And then, of course, Emmy winning Merritt Weaver always brings something so special to a project. So did you tackle those scenes any differently to how you would approach the main timeline, or was it just depended on the scene?
I mean, visually, there were some differences. We sort of had literally like in the like different camera LUTs for, we called it like present day, past happy, and past sad. It's an oversimplification, but sort of, you know, so we had slightly different looks. But, you know, the way that we talked about it was very specifically actually not flashbacks. We sort of talked about it as two different timelines, so that it's almost like an A story and a B story. Because sometimes one of the things I loved about the script is that it's not formulaic. It's like sometimes you go back because, you know, because present day Claire is thinking about something, so you go back to it. But sometimes you just go back and you don't know why until later, when it sort of comes full circle. Which is, I don't know if you've read the book Tiny Beautiful Things, but it's incredible. And the way the format of it is, you know, it's an advice column, so it's just questions and answers. And so someone asks a question, and then the way that Cheryl starts an answer, you're like, what the hell is she talking about? How does this possibly connect to what, you know, she starts telling a personal story that seems completely irrelevant, entertaining, but irrelevant. And then she like sort of twists it around and it comes full circle in this way. And so that was sort of the attempt with the flashbacks, or the past timeline, was to have it feel like, you know, sometimes you know why you're going back, and sometimes you're going back because you'll find out later. It's not important right now that you know why. And then having them sort of cross over with, you know, with each of them entering each other's timelines. It's just, yeah, meant to feel, in my same both and way, you know, meant to feel like there's no easy answers here of exactly, you know, why we're seeing her here, or why, you know, it's sort of like meant to evoke the way that memory feels and the way that emotion feels, meant to sort of, you know, not confuse, but like sort of make you think deeper and make you not have a hard answer to something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And yes, you're 100% right. It kind of reminded me a little bit of some other films that I've seen, like After Sun, for example, where memory is so subjective. And I felt like this was, am I really watching what happened? Or maybe I'm not, but it's the feeling. It's the feeling. It's so hard for me to put this into words, but I get what you're saying. And it really worked for me. Rachel, thank you for your time today. It's beautiful work. You should be super proud.
Thank you so much. Thank you for talking to me about it and for engaging with it. I mean, I really appreciate it.